Tansin etute magtiar wheatly nisigasun opasqueakuche. Tawau. Welcome to APTN National News. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced at a press conference in Edmonton the first set of projects to be reviewed by the new Major Projects Office. 5 projects will be immediately referred to the office for consideration. Carney says the 5 projects would generate $60 billion for the Canadian economy and create tens of thousands of jobs. An Indigenous Advisory Committee made up of 11 representatives from across Canada has also been named. As our Dennis Ward shows you, all of the news has mixed reviews.
5 projects will be immediately referred to the Major Project Office for consideration. Top of that list is the expansion of the LNG Canada Phase 2 in Kitimat, British Columbia, which includes involvement from the Haida First Nation. No new oil pipelines or enhancements of infrastructure into Northern Ontario's critical mineral-rich Ring of Fire are mentioned. The Prime Minister said none of the major projects will move ahead unless they advance the interests of Indigenous peoples.
To be in Canada's national interest, a major project must strengthen Canada's autonomy, our resilience, and our security. It must have clear benefits for Canadians. It must have a high likelihood of being completed. It must contribute to clean growth in Canada's climate goals. And it must advance the interests of Indigenous peoples.
In addition to the 5 projects being announced on Thursday for referral to the Major Project Office, the feds identified strategic areas of focus they say will be transformative for Canada. Among them is the Port of Churchill. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew called it a great day for Churchill, Manitoba, and Canada.
One of the things that I really appreciated seeing the federal government talk about today, the Prime Minister mentioning in particular, but also their news release, is the idea of icebreakers being in Hudson Bay to help us have year-round shipping seasons here. Now, there's a lot of work that's going to have to happen. We got to think about wildlife, environment. Our Indigenous partner governments are going to have a lot of input in this process.
Part of the Major Projects Office includes an Indigenous Advisory Council that was announced Wednesday evening. 11 representatives from across the country will sit on the council. British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, Manitoba, and Nova Scotia have 1 seat each on the council. Both Saskatchewan and Quebec have 2, and the remaining 2 advisors are from the north. Reaction to the Advisory Council and the list of projects has been swift.
And so when I think about any projects that come through Manitoba, you will have to talk to our First Nations leadership first before you enter into our territories. Without that permission, you won't be coming into the region.
Kinew feels it was a missed opportunity not to include a First Nations representative from Manitoba on the Advisory Council.
The MMF is going to have a role as a Métis government, but the First Nations have to be given that opportunity to engage. They have to have inclusion. So again,
Dennis Ward, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And in Labrador, the inquiry respecting the treatment, experiences, and outcomes of Innu in the child protection system continues this week at the Sheshashit Innu Nation 3 years after the launching of the inquiry. Nangonske Rose Jacobs reports.
The week-long hearings focus on the Innu history, the impact of child welfare, and the federal role in child protection in Innu communities. Witness Apatet Ben Andrew is from the Sheshashit First Nation. He testified Innu history must be known to understand the impacts of the child protection system.
I continue to seek out elders to listen to their stories because I had a need to understand why we're now living so differently than the way earlier generations had for centuries lived in Nujmit. Why were these differences so harmful, so widespread, affecting all the families, not just me and my family?
Commissioners James Igliorti, Anastasia Cupie, and Mike Devine are hearing testimonies from Innu community members and officials from Indigenous Services Canada at the Youth Centre in Sheshashit Innu First Nation, located 40 kilometers north of Happy Valley Goose Bay. Mike Devine summarized the hearings.
Since it started in May of 2022, the inquiry has heard from about 100 community members during our 8 weeks of community meetings in both Sheshi, and Natwashi. We heard personal, heart-rending, and inspiring stories of lived experience of Innu.
The Innu Nation demanded an inquiry in 2022 after 6 Innu youth in care or aftercare died, including 3 deaths by suicide. The inquiry was officially launched in May 2022, including investigations into the deaths of the 6 youth. The Innu say youth in provincial care lost culture, language, and familial connection. APTN says colonialism destroyed Innu traditional ways of life.
As I said, the formal transmission of this knowledge was forbidden by the priest. We were no longer being raised up immersed in Innu culture. We were immersed in some new and unknown culture of trauma. Our healthy Innu ways have been replaced by our powerful processes of the church and education.
The final report is expected to be completed by October 31st, 2026. Nagonska Rose Jacobs, APTN National News, Chibuktuk, also known as Halifax.
Moose hunting season begins next week near Bloodvein River First Nation in eastern Manitoba. But non-Indigenous hunters pursuing the sacred animal will be turned away at check stops managed by the community in an effort to protect the moose population and their food security. Here's Sav Jonza with a deeper look at the conflict.
Elders of a First Nation in Manitoba say the moose population in their traditional territory is dwindling. They say in 2024, the community was able to harvest only 1 moose to share amongst its few hundred residents.
It's just not like it was anymore. It's dead.
Members of Bloodvein River First Nation are using check stops to prevent non-Indigenous people looking to hunt the sacred animal from entering the area 200 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. They say the decision comes after years of moose overhunting by big game enthusiasts, leaving little chance for local hunters to sustain their food security.
We've reported it to conservation officers to no avail. We had issues on poaching, sport hunting, and moose being killed for just for the antlers.
Their chief, Lisa Young, says a 2024 aerial survey by the Manitoba government confirms the moose population is critically low in some areas of their traditional territory, but stable in others. She's asking the province to stop issuing moose licenses for the zones.
We are concerned that the government of Manitoba has issued hundreds of moose tags this year without consulting with us, much less seeking our consent. For these reasons, we have implemented a moose hunting ban in our traditional territories.
But hunting organizations in the province aren't happy with the restriction and are calling for intervention before the location's hunting season starts September 15th. In a letter to RCMP, the Manitoba Wildlife Federation urged the removal of what they call an illegal barrier blocking access to an undefined area of provincial Crown land. They state on their website that while the Manitoba Wildlife Federation acknowledges Bloodvein River First Nation's jurisdiction over its designated reserve land of approximately 1,600 hectares, this blockade affects a much larger area of provincial Crown land that is legally open to all Manitobans. In a public statement, the Manitoba Lodges and Outfitters Association echoed the need for access to the area and urged the Manitoba government to resolve the blockade. Their executive director, Don Lamont, said, "This isn't the first threat of this kind coming from Indigenous communities in recent months. We're concerned that this kind of action could happen elsewhere." When asked for an interview, Lamont said he had no more to say. APTN News did not hear back from the Manitoba Wildlife Federation before airtime. In an emailed statement, Minister of Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures, Ian Bushy, said he understands the importance of ensuring a stable moose population. He says his department has repeatedly met with both sides and commits to continue working in partnership with Indigenous communities and hunters to support the long-term sustainability of moose, ensure safe and respectful hunting practices, and make sure that hunting, fishing, and trapping can continue for generations to come. Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kyra Wilson had this to say about First Nations sovereignty.
When we think about the province or any organization that believes that they have the right to speak on our nations, you do not. You do not have the right to speak on our nations. You do not have the right to issue licenses to hunt in our ancestral lands and territories.
Chief Angela Lavasseur of Nissequoia Cree Nation, around 450 kilometers northwest of Bloodvein, says the moose overhunting issue affects many First Nations across the province. She says Bloodvein's check stop isn't a threat to non-Indigenous hunters, but food insecurity for First Nations is.
That's my message for these folks claiming that they're going to come and knock down blockades. You know, what little land we have left in this country, and you are basically perpetuating genocide and just espousing your racist and ethnocentric views and acting like you're entitled to our First Nations land as well. I don't think so. Hey, go Sunny.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Time for a break, but let's check in with Bruce De La Cruz to see what's the scoop.
Hi there. I'm at the North Slave Métis Alliance's community garden here in Yellowknife. Behind me, fresh produce and fresh flowers are thriving here up north. Stay tuned later this week as I sit down with Shirley Coumont to hear her dream